right, good morning, everyone. Hopefully the sound is good. I was checking it before I started the live stream, and everything seemed okay on my end here. So hopefully it sounds good over there. Just let me know in the comments if there's any, or in the chat if there's any problems. I said we'll start at 10:30, so we'll wait till 10:30 to really get started here. But just wanted to start off with saying good morning. Um, I know some of these have gotten shared around, and also since we have some new people watching, kind of the aim of these here. Um, I'm pretty much showing you like the official forecast from the Hurricane Center and stuff like that, and that's what I'm sticking to is the official forecast. But what I hope to do in this is kind of explain some of the reasoning behind the forecast, and maybe provide a little insight into what's going on there. I don't have any secret information or anything like that. I'm just showing you, satellite model data, stuff like that. Maybe just kind of explaining how some of that stuff works a little bit and how that's going into the forecast so people that are watching this can kind of better understand, like when you see them talking about some of the forecasts or they talk about these certain forecast models or they're showing satellite on live television when you're watching, you kind of go, oh, that's what they're talking about here. So that's kind of what I'm doing is just kind of explaining what's going on kind of behind the forecast for these hurricanes, as well as just looking at some of the expected local impacts and things like that. If you have any questions as I go, just ask them in the little chat feature. I can see it right in front of me on this other monitor here. So just let me know, or if the audio or video starts flaking out, you could let me know in there too. It seemed like everything was working fine when I was in preview mode, but anyway, I'm showing 10:30 now, so we'll go ahead and jump in. Starting off here is this is the GOES 16 satellite True Color satellite product, and the first thing I notice, I notice a lot of things, but if you look right in the middle, we have what looks like an eye beginning to form in the center of Hurricane Ida, which that is a sign that this storm is getting much better organized, that it's strengthening. You can also see these high cloud tops that are developing. We're starting to get an eye wall in there. I read the 10 o'clock a.m. discussion from the National Hurricane Center, and they talked about when the Hurricane Hunter aircraft flew in there, which they have weather radar on board as well as different instruments. They could see that looks like an eye wall is beginning to form. Now the winds haven't really caught up yet. They still held the intensity at 85 miles per hour, which is a Category 1 hurricane. But they said that the pressure is beginning to fall. It's looking better on radar. It's looking better on satellite. So they think we're going to start seeing that the winds in this really start to ramp up over the next several hours here, and they are expecting a rapid intensification process to begin with this. So what we're looking at here, again, this is just kind of, they call it the True Color. It's more or less just kind of what it looks like from outer space, kind of a fancy visible satellite product. And the little indicators you see, these are actually lightning strikes or lightning flashes over here. Not a lot of lightning in the center of the storm, which is not unusual. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes when it starts to intensify, we can see some lightning in the inner core of the storm. The absence of that lightning does not mean it's not about to intensify. It's just something we see sometimes, but there is quite a bit of lightning out in these outer rain bands as you get off the coast of Florida. And even there's some other thunderstorms, I don't think that are actually related to the hurricane that are off the Mississippi Delta, off the Louisiana coast there, and then more out here. Another thing I noticed on this satellite is the outflow patterns looking really good. You see these kind of wispy looking clouds out on the periphery of it. That's so there's at the surface there's air rushing into the storm. It's an area of low pressure, so there's air flowing into the storm. It rises up in the center of it, and then it spreads out at the top as to ventilate the storm so that it can keep strengthening. And you see these kind of wispy clouds on the periphery of it. That is where the storm is being vented. And so when you see that established on all quadrants of the storm, like we see here, you see it down around the Yucatan Peninsula, over Florida. In fact, if you're in southeast Louisiana, you can probably start to see some of these high clouds arriving. And here, that's a sign that, again, it's a very impressive satellite picture here. So I think it is on pace to begin that strengthening process. Switching over to the infrared channel, which the infrared satellite, what this is looking at, there's a sensor on the satellite in outer space that can measure the temperature of the tops of the clouds that it's looking at. And what we look for is very cold cloud tops, because it's a sign that you have a very intense updraft and it's pushing that cloud material higher into the atmosphere where it's a lot colder. And so that's what you see here. And I don't have a color scale on here, but basically the reds, and then when you start getting into these gray colors, like you see, those are the coldest cloud tops. I talked about that eye that was beginning to form. You can actually see that in the center of the storm. If you look in here, especially these last couple of frames, you're starting to see the cloud tops warm in there, and that's because you're starting to get that eye clearing out right there. So that's what we look at in the infrared satellite, and so this product is useful, just for kind of getting the overall intensity of the thunderstorms and convection, as we call it, that's within the storm, and of course at night. We can't use the visible product, that previous one I showed. You can't look at that during the nighttime hours. But you can look at the infrared 24 hours a day. So let's switch over to the latest Hurricane Center forecast. So this is as of 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time, so hot off the presses here. Again, they held intensity at 85 miles per hour, Category 1 hurricane. I'll just start off with the traditional cone product right here. And again, the forecast is unchanged, still showing it as a Category 4 hurricane as it approaches the Louisiana coast. Now, one thing that is noteworthy is they sped it up a little bit. Last night we were talking landfall around like 2 a.m. or so. Now they're showing 7 p.m. Sunday. So they have actually sped this up a bit on here. And I'll get to those estimated time of arrival graphics in a moment. I know those are popular graphics. So we're looking a little bit faster, looking at landfall, still almost exactly where they had it last night. Kind of between Morgan City and Grand Isle, Terrebonne Parish. That's where they're still showing it. And then tracking very near or just west of the Baton Rouge metropolitan area. And then eventually curving inland over the Mississippi and Tennessee valleys. One thing I've noted in here is that they're showing it weakening pretty rapidly after it makes landfall. I mean, they're showing 7 p.m. Sunday, a Category 4 hurricane, and then weakening to a tropical storm within 12 hours. So that probably does bode well for people that are well inland if this thing does indeed weaken that quickly. That's not to say that there's not going to still be some pretty intense winds, certainly a lot of rain with that, but that is a good sign that they're not showing it as a powerful hurricane moving well inland or something like we have seen with some hurricanes. Most notably, 2018 Hurricane Michael made landfall as a Category 5 near Panama City and produce near hurricane force wind gusts as far inland as Atlanta. So we can see these things carry quite a big punch far inland. This one, like I said, I don't want to minimize if you're in Baton Rouge. It's still going to probably get some pretty intense wind there. But it is good news that they are showing it weakening fairly quickly after landfall. Going to the tropical storm force wind probabilities, you now see basically all of South Louisiana and well into central Louisiana and southern Mississippi over 70% now. So again, while they are showing that weakening, you are going to still see at least tropical storm force winds push well inland with that. And I can look at what the exact intensity they have forecast is. So here's a little insider tip. If you go to the forecast discussion and scroll to the very bottom, they'll actually give you the forecast intensity. And actually, I apologize, I misspoke. They're showing 130 at landfall. That's still a Category 4 hurricane. So they did bring it down from last night when they're showing 140. That is still a very dangerous Category 4 hurricane, though. And then they're showing 70 miles per hour after landfall. That point that was on Sunday morning. I apologize, Monday morning. They're showing that 70 miles per hour. So still a high-end tropical storm as it's going past or going north of Baton Rouge. Now I was going to switch over to the time of arrival graphics. And at this point, I'm ready to mainly start looking at the most likely time of arrival. Because we're getting so close to the landfall, there's not going to be a big difference. So we're really looking at the tropical storm force winds starting to affect the Louisiana coast, New Orleans, around 8 in the morning on Sunday, and then pushing inland through the day. Baton Rouge probably starting to see the winds picking up, the gusty winds, the rain moving in. probably sometime Sunday afternoon. Same for Lafayette if they get much over in the Lafayette area. And we'll talk about, the track for these individual locations a little more. But first we're going to go over to some of the forecast models here. Now, one thing I was having this conversation with someone yesterday is, in the past you might have heard which model is better, is the European model, the GFS model, and the truth is both of them are very good. In fact, that over the last couple of years, the GFS model has really closed a lot of the gap that the European model had over it. So they're both very good models. So here's what the GFS looks like. This is the overnight run of that. I'm just looking at surface wind speeds and pressure here. And there it is, almost right where the hurricane center has it, making landfall. This, again, the GFS, this has been consistently faster. This is showing landfall as early as 4 p.m. on Sunday. I'm also looking inland towards Baton Rouge. It's looking like it's showing the model, or this model is showing those gusty winds arriving in Baton Rouge by 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon, which is on par with that graphic we looked at. And then it takes it inland, almost right over Houma, going up kind of between New Iberia, Pierre Part, and then passing just to the west of Baton Rouge. This is a track not too dissimilar from Hurricane Andrew in 1992. It looked a lot like that. Now, I don't want to say this is going to feel exactly like Andrew in New Orleans and Baton Rouge because, for one, this storm is bigger. As some of the Hurricane Center mentioned in their discussion, that one thing the hurricane hunters observed is that the size of the wind field, that radius of tropical storm force winds has really expanded. And so it's getting in the Gulf of Mexico, and not only is it going to strengthen, it's getting larger in size. So even if you're not taking a direct hit from this thing, and especially if you're on the east side of it, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, even I would even say coastal southern Mississippi, Biloxi Gulfport, you're going to see some impact, see quite a bit of impact from this. But then continues inland, and you can see that rapid weakening process here. This is Monday morning right here, and then by Monday evening, it's pretty unimpressive as it's moving up towards, say, Vicksburg, Mississippi. Just for comparison, we'll look at the European model here. And again, it's maybe a little to the west of the GFS, but you can see how remarkable the agreement is here. Now, there is one thing I noticed is the timing. This right here, this is showing landfall at about, we'll call it 10 p.m. or so. So the GFS is a few hours faster. In fact, I would say 4 or 5 hours faster with the landfall than the European model is. So a little disagreement on the timing, but the eventual track, they're both looking pretty spot on. And that's what's truly remarkable here. So that's where the GFS has the landfall right here. This is at 4 p.m. on Sunday. And then there's the European model, maybe 30 miles to the west of there. Of course, that could make a lot of difference for some folks. So we're at the point where even that 30-mile variation can make a lot of difference, especially if you're in, say, like Morgan City or New Iberia or somewhere like that, or even Lafayette. That could make quite a bit of difference. However, I think at this point, just even based on the European model, where it still is taking it kind of over the Atchafalaya Basin, just west of Baton Rouge, and it's showing the eye of this going right through West Baton Rouge Parish on here. So if I back up, that's where it has the cursor kind of going through Iberville Parish up towards New Road. So again, the track is not too unlike Hurricane Andrew from 1992, which is going to put New Orleans and Baton Rouge on the east side. Where we're going to have the stronger winds, the more widespread rain, and then it'll put Lafayette on the west side, where you'll still see some wind, you'll still see some rain, but not quite as severe as it will be over on the east side of the storm. But we can look at these individual models, but what's really useful with this is to kind of look at all of them together. That's where things can get a lot more useful. So here's what some of that track guidance looks like. This morning, this is this morning's model graphics. The black line here, that's the official Hurricane Center track. and they're going right up the middle or maybe just on the east side of where you see these models that are tightly clustered. And so that's what they're looking at. It really has been remarkable at this storm of how strong the agreement has been on the track for these models here. Like I said, it's been truly remarkable, and the Hurricane Center has stated multiple times now in their discussion that they have pretty high confidence in the track forecast, and this is why. Is we just see how tightly clustered those are. Even 36 hours before landfall, they're probably within about 30 miles of each other. Here's some of the higher, how should I put this, more robust model guidance. Here are these late cycle models, and again you see quite a clustering of them. You have a couple outliers out here. This one is the UKX, that's the United Kingdom's model. The Met Service is a little bit of an outlier on there, the green track, but you see most of these, and again this black line that's a little difficult to see, that's the official track. They're pretty much going right up the middle of that consensus, which I think at this point it's looking like, again, landfall kind of southwest Terrebonne Parish, going up the Atchafalaya Basin, which that's going to put Baton Rouge and Houma, especially Houma because it's right on the coast, Houma, Thibodaux, then up towards Baton Rouge metropolitan area. So that includes like Ascension Parish, Livingston, Denham Springs, as well as obviously the kind of urban core of Baton Rouge is going to be right in that front eye wall of the storm right there. So I think that's where you're going to see the worst winds. Is going to track kind of through Terrebonne Parish up through Assumption, Ascension, East Baton Rouge, right there. Of course, the winds will lose some of the steam as they go that far inland into Baton Rouge. It's going to be much stronger, say, if you're in Houma or Thibodaux, versus what it's going to be like in Baton Rouge. But still looking at some pretty strong winds in the Baton Rouge area. Finally, I'll look at some of the intensity guidance while we're still in kind of forecast model land. Here's what some of those look like. This is the early cycle. Does only show it peaking at a high-end Category 3, the most recent run. The Hurricane Center is actually going a little above what the models are showing, just because they're looking at the satellite presentation this morning, as well as just looking at the conditions in the Gulf of Mexico. And then if I look at the late cycle intensity guidance, which is again the slightly more robust models, and some of those do show it getting to that Category 4 status right there, right prior to landfall, which is more or less what the Hurricane Center is showing. They're showing it getting right up to that Category 4 intensity. So again, the Hurricane Center has been going a little bit on the high end of the guidance. I think that's very reasonable based on, again, how quickly the satellite presentation has improved, and then just the condition in the Gulf of Mexico. But intensity forecasting, so I talked about how good the track forecasting is getting, how tightly clustered those models were. The intensity is still quite challenging on these storms. So we have all these models here. There's a lot of really small scale features and processes inside the hurricane that affect its intensity. Also, when they start getting to this Category 3 or 4 strength, they can get these fluctuations in intensity. And that played into what we saw at Katrina and Hurricane Laura. In the case of Katrina, it was a Category 5 hurricane the day before landfall, and it was kind of on the downward side of one of those fluctuations as it made landfall and had dropped all the way to Category 3 as it came ashore. Hurricane Laura was the opposite case. It was a strong hurricane and then was reaching the upside of one of those fluctuations as it went ashore. It was peaking as it made landfall in Cameron Parish. So that's something that's very difficult to forecast. That's why we always like to say prepare for one category higher than forecast. I know what you're thinking. That would mean Category 5. Since they're forecasting it to be a 4. So essentially at this point, if you're along the Louisiana coast, southeast Louisiana, I mean, you still want to prepare for a major hurricane. It could end up being a 3 at landfall, could end up being a 4, could end up being, who knows. So that's what you want to prepare for at this point. It's a major hurricane. I already talked about track a lot, but I just want to show one more graphic that I had up here. And this is a graphic I actually made. Right here, showing all of the GFS models. Now, what this is, so to run a forecast model, the first step you have to do, right, is the model has to know what is the current state of the atmosphere. I have to figure out what do things look like now so I can predict the future. Obviously, the model's not going to do a very good job if the initial state of the model is already off. But we know there's some error in that process. So what they do is they take the GFS model, and by the way, they do this with the European model and others as well, and they tweak the initial condition just a little bit, kind of within like the ballpark of what they expect the possible error in that initial state to be, and then they run the model again and get these different tracks. And what we look for is how tightly clustered are these, because what that tells me is if they're really tightly clustered, which, you know, there is some variation. Some of them do go, you know, closer to New Iberia and Lafayette, but really, that's a pretty tight clustering of those models. And so what that says is even accounting for some of the potential error in the model, the forecast is pretty confident. I have this light blue, which that's the mean of all of those tracks. So if you just went right at the middle of all of them, and it's the light blue color. And then the yellow one, that's like kind of we call it the deterministic GFS, or the standard GFS. That's the one I just showed the animation of. That's the one they're going to show on TV. And you see those two are right on top of each other. So in other words, this model is saying, hey, I am pretty confident in the track. That's giving more confidence to the Hurricane Center. I don't think we're going to see any significant changes in the track of Ida at this point. I think that's looking pretty good. Now to close out with looking at like some of the expected impacts here, let me refresh this page just to make sure I have the latest here. And I'll look at this threats and impacts. So here's what they're forecasting, and notice they still have the pink area over a wide swath. Right here, they're still saying you should prepare for a high-end hurricane if you were anywhere from Lafayette over to Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Now, personally, I'm thinking Lafayette is starting to look better here. I think the reason they still have Lafayette in that is kind of if it's within the historical track error, which is what that light blue cone you see on the map is. If it's within the historical track error, it puts Lafayette much more under the gun. However, like I said, I personally think the worst is going to be towards Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and then especially down towards Houma and Thibodaux. I think that's the more grave area. But do me a favor, if you're in Lafayette, don't let your guard down. You know, you still want to prepare for a hurricane. With that, I mean, again, it would not take a huge westward shift to really ramp things up more in Lafayette. And even though you're going to be on the west side, there's always kind of that thing where, you know, the east side's worse than the west. And while there is truth to that, you can still get strong winds on the west side, especially on kind of the front, kind of northwest side of it. You can still get some strong winds. You can still get tornadoes like that. So, you know, I don't think it's quite as serious in Lafayette, but again, don't let your guard down just yet there. Looking at storm surge, I think this is going to be a big problem with this storm. If you're in Lafayette and Baton Rouge, you're far enough inland where this isn't going to be as much of a problem. But they're forecasting 10 to 15 feet of storm surge near where the eye makes landfall and points eastward of there. So Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche, Jefferson, Plaquemines, even over to St. Bernard, you're looking at a 10 to 15 foot surge. Personally, I don't know, like, what the levee system is like around New Orleans. I know I saw where they said that they expect that the levees are plenty high enough to handle this kind of storm surge. But just do me a favor, listen to the local officials. If you live somewhere and they say get out, get out. Do what they say. And then there's different levees. You have the hurricane storm damage reduction system around New Orleans is one, but then you have all the various local levees and back levees. So again, just listen to what your local officials say. If your parish emergency management, your parish officials, your city officials are saying to evacuate, do what they say. Because to make these decisions, they're talking to the National Weather Service, they're talking to the Corps of Engineers, they're talking to the levee management districts. So they're talking to all of those before they make those decisions. So again, if they're telling you a mandatory evacuation, do what they say. Heavy rain is of course going to be another issue with this. I forgot to pull it up earlier, the actual rainfall amounts on this graphic, which we're showing over southeast Louisiana, 10 to 15 inches of rain. It looks like a pretty solid bet. Baton Rouge and New Orleans both included in that. And then some areas are going to even see more than 15 inches of rain. This isn't like, Hurricane Harvey, widespread catastrophic flooding type rain, but some areas are certainly going to see very heavy rainfall. This is enough to produce severe flash flooding. In some locations, it's going to cause local streams and rivers to rise, especially the ones near the coast where they can't drain out because of the storm surge. So heavy rain is certainly going to be an issue. This is something that, again, I think can get a little swept under the rug sometimes. With hurricanes, we get really focused on the wind and storm surge, but the heavy rain and the inland flooding is one of the top, if not the top killer when it comes to hurricanes. So if you know you live in a flood prone area, if you've had flooding near you or where you live before, it could be a problem again. So let's not forget about the heavy rain threat. And finally, going to the tornado threat. This is kind of like probably one of the lesser concerns in most hurricanes, but it's still a concern, especially as they move inland. You do have that tornado threat. It's generally going to be to the east of it, but what I find most remarkable about the tornado threat when it comes to hurricanes is how far away from the storm it can extend. And you can see how large of an area they've drawn, all the way over past Pensacola, well up into northern Mississippi. So the main thing there is just make sure you have a way to receive tornado warnings. Make sure you have the wireless emergency alerts enabled on your phone. You can do that on both iPhone and Android for sure, because that will go off for a tornado warning. Like if you have to pause this feed and make sure you do that so you don't forget. That's a good way. The modern NOAA weather radios you can program to go off for your specific county or parish only for tornado warnings if you want. Just have a way to receive a warning like that, because the folks at the National Weather Service will be watching radar as this is coming ashore, and if they see something that looks like it could produce a tornadic spin up, they're going to issue a warning for it. So just make sure you have a way to receive that. And the last thing we can do to kind of close out here is, again, I like to zoom in on a couple of locations. We'll go from west to east. Once again, starting with Lafayette, going there, pulling up their hurricane local statement, and just see kind of what exactly they're forecasting. And here, again, you usually have to fish for it. It's usually in this hurricane warning text. So Lafayette right now, they're forecasting below tropical storm force winds, 25 to 35 sustained with gusts to 45. That's if you just said, if you assume the current track and intensity forecast as well as the size of the storm is a perfect forecast, that's what Lafayette could expect, is kind of low-end tropical storm conditions. But notice what they're saying, that you should still prepare for the potential for winds of 110 miles an hour. Because, again, they're saying if it's within that standard track error, though, again, I personally think in this one, I think it's looking like a pretty small track error compared to what it usually is. But the point is, still prepare for a hurricane if you're in Lafayette right now, because you're going to be just to the west of where the center is, and it would not take that big of a jog to the west to put Lafayette in much more serious winds. So that's what you have there. For rainfall amounts, they're looking at 3 to 6 inches of rain in Lafayette, potentially higher. So that's usually kind of how they like to word this, is they'll say, kind of give that range, or they say 3 to 6 inches. This is kind of what most people expect with locally higher amounts, meaning a few of you are going to see even more than 6 inches. Like that. Now we'll go over to Baton Rouge. And since Baton Rouge is kind of a big place, a very sprawling metropolitan area, I usually like to go and click on the map kind of down here like northern Ascension Parish. I'm kind of hitting, Ascension, Livingston, and all of those folks too. I also just happen to know I have some folks that are in there watching right there, and I can pull this up for other locations. So they're showing 55 to 70 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts to 90 miles per hour beginning Sunday morning, lasting until Monday morning, is what they're expecting. That's, again, if we assume a perfect forecast, that's what they're looking at. Now, to put that in perspective, the peak wind gust at the Baton Rouge airport during Hurricane Gustav was 92 miles per hour. So that's basically what they're forecasting, is something similar to Gustav. Again, I get a little nervous of doing this is like such and such hurricane, because they're all different. But just if you wanted to say, what does a 90 mile per hour wind gust look like, that's what it would look like. on there. Again, they're saying potential for greater than that. So, prepare for, pretty high end. And then rainfall amounts, additional 10 to 15 with locally higher amounts. That's a lot of rain. Again, it's not and it doesn't have to be Hurricane Harvey with 40 inches of rain to produce pretty severe flooding. So even that 10 to 15, that's going to be enough to cause flooding. If you know you live somewhere flood prone, take whatever steps that you might need to take, sandbags, what have you, like that. It's also going to flood a lot of the roads. So basically, once things start going downhill tomorrow afternoon, it'll be time to just stay home, stay inside. This is going to continue through all day Monday. The winds might start to come down late Monday, but you're going to have, power lines down, trees down, debris on the road, flooding on the roads. So really, even all day Monday is going to be pretty bad too. Probably not going to be till Tuesday till things really start to quiet down for Baton Rouge, Lafayette. Finally, I'll pull up New Orleans on this as well, just because I know there might be some folks in New Orleans that are checking this out. So looking at the New Orleans area, their winds aren't quite as high because they're showing them further away. They're saying 30 to 40 at gusts to 55. Now, if we see a slight eastward bobble in the track, and that's why they have this here, where they're saying potential for 74 to 110. So while they're only forecasting tropical storm conditions for New Orleans right now, they're not ruling out hurricane conditions. That's why there's a hurricane warning in effect for New Orleans right now. So that's certainly going to be an issue there. And then, again, for the timing, Sunday morning through Monday morning, storm surge 7 to 11 feet. Again, that's outside the levee system. You do have the levees that are around the city. And then finally, looking at those rainfall amounts, 8 to 12 inches with locally higher amounts. That's probably more problematic for somewhere like New Orleans, where, as we know, they have to pump the water out of the city. So, again, just to kind of recap everything, from the beginning that we talked about, the track forecast is looking highly confident at this point, though, again, even something as small as a 30-mile shift to the east or west could result in, different impacts for certain locations. But I think, basically, if you're anywhere from Lafayette to New Orleans, inclusive, so if you're in Lafayette, if you're in Baton Rouge, you're in New Orleans, certainly if you're in, like south of there, Houma, Thibodaux, you need to be preparing for a hurricane at this point. Lafayette, again, I don't want you to totally let your guard down, even though it looks like it's probably going to stay to your east, because it is going to be really close. And even on that immediate west side, you can still get some strong wind gusts with that. So that's what we're looking at for wind. Rain, again, 10 to 15 inches, looking pretty common in a lot of areas. Storm surge going to be an issue along the coast and certainly areas outside of any levees. And then mostly on the east side of it, you're going to be looking at the tornadoes. Just kind of going back to the general forecast of the storm, I mentioned the track. Intensity is always difficult to forecast. This is no exception here, but I think we're looking at least a Category 3 at landfall, probably a 4. 5, those are so rare. I would say, there's been 4 in U.S. history for a reason. But nevertheless, if you're looking at 3 or higher, it's going to be pretty intense, certainly right at landfall. We're looking landfall Sunday evening. I don't want to get super specific on the timing. It's a big storm. Probably worse conditions for the Lafayette and Baton Rouge area is going to be probably, I'm thinking, overnight Sunday, especially if you're having the landfall Sunday evening. You'll be looking at the worst going through Baton Rouge and Lafayette in the middle of the night, New Orleans as well. Conditions still staying pretty rough on Monday, and then probably Tuesday before things are really starting to settle down there. So that's all I had. I don't see any questions in the chat. I'll probably try to do another one of these, I guess, tomorrow morning, Sunday morning. Maybe by then we'll start to, maybe it'll start getting within range of some of the coastal radars. We'll start seeing what some of the surface observations are like there along the coast. Start to get some more real-time data on this and start looking at it. So anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll hopefully do another one of these tomorrow morning.